Nationwide.
We'll talk about some strong thunderstorms around Phoenix and Tucson, Arizona overnight, and the blistering heat wave that it's going to continue. But first, here's a look at our tropical update. We'll show you exactly what's happening with our brand new tropical storm. We have one on the map right now. It's over the eastern Pacific Ocean, and the latest stats coming into us indicate that tropical storm Celia is located at 20.8 degrees north, or about 110.3 degrees west, or about 140 miles to the south of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Top sustained wind 60 miles per hour. An outside chance it could become a minimal hurricane. But as of right now, it looks like it's going to be drifting a little bit more to the west and northwest in the cooler waters. It may not make that category, and so we could be looking at just a weakening tropical storm in a matter of the next 24 to 36 hours for sure. Movement right now 17 miles per hour. The pressure holding steady at about 1,000 millibars right off the coast of Baja California. And we think later on today, with more of a west-northwesterly movement, as it begins to curl away from Baja California, tropical storm warnings will be dropped and discontinued for Baja California, especially for the southern tip. Let's show you what it looks like on the satellite picture at the present time. We'll stand over here and you can see that we are looking at this blob of convection right now, thunderstorms, all in a pretty concentric circle right now. And again, it's a healthy looking system at the present time. As you recall, yesterday at this time, we were talking about perhaps we could be looking at a tropical depression forming within the next 24 hours. Well, just a matter of hours later, it jumped from that status, basically just a blob of convection, to a tropical storm, went right over the phase of becoming a tropical depression. So again, you can see it right now approaching the Baja California region, but again, it's expected to move more towards the west-northwest as the day goes on. Let's take a look at the entire Atlantic basin right now. Quiet weather for sure, all the way from off the coast of Africa throughout much of the mid-Atlantic, back into the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico, which is basically right now convection free. Boaters, not too much to worry about here today. What a great day to get out there and do some fishing, or to get out there and head out to the beach. Looks like it's going to be another hot one, another muggy day for much of the Gulf coastal regions. The chance of any concentrated thunderstorms will be very, very small for the next couple of days, with this massive area of high pressure suppressing now any thunderstorm development in this part of the nation. Off the coast of the Carolinas and Georgia, and also Florida, we have seen some interesting weather during the last few days. This is being caused by a trough low pressure off the southeastern coast of the United States, moving on eastbound. This will not become tropical. It will not gain any more tropical characteristics. It's on the move eastward right now. And again, heavier rainfall, which was plaguing places like Jacksonville and St. Augustine 2 days ago. Yesterday, Savannah saw heavy rainfall, as well as the region around Hilton Head. Doesn't look like too much of that today. There could be some scattered showers and storms this afternoon, but the big area of convection that we have seen during the last couple of days over the coastline, even at this time of the morning, is now out to sea. And with the daytime heating later on this afternoon, we could be looking at some more storms refiring along the coast for sure. Let's see what's going on over the western Caribbean. Again, not too much going on right now. Convection-free conditions for the most part, and nothing is imminent at the present time. We were following this system, by the way. We thought it was going to be approaching the islands in about 2 or 3 days. We saw a blob of convection here, and also low-level circulation looked like it was trying to organize, but look how it's now beginning to stretch out. So it looks like conditions are not all that favorable right now for this thing to organize anytime soon, especially when you can't really pick out, well, where is the center of circulation? Is it here? Is it here? Or is it here? Is this all being stretched out? A very unorganized system as of the present time. Farther eastward now, we're getting closer and closer to the Cape Verde season. These are the Cape Verde Islands right through here. These are these strong tropical waves we continue to watch come off the coast of Africa, and some of these do form into tropical depressions, storms, and hurricanes just about midway through the Atlantic basin, and by the time they hit the United States can become very powerful hurricanes. But once again, it's a little bit too early to worry about these systems as of right now. But again, once we get into August and also into early September, that is the prime of the Cape Verde season. Let's come back right now and show you what's happening over the lower 48. Beautiful weekend in shape for the northeastern part of the country. The heat wave continues across Texas and much of the plains. That will not break. What is going to be breaking, though, is the heat wave across the Pacific Northwest from Walla Walla, Washington to around Boise, Idaho and Salt Lake City, Utah. And maybe by early morning tomorrow, we'll be tracking some big storms across Minnesota into Wisconsin. More to come in a couple of minutes.
Every job has its pressures. Ours just happened to be barometric. Weather Center AM, this morning and every morning.
Hi there.
Hello.
Now, you want to be shocked and amazed by our psychics, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Well, this time, it's me who's going to shock and amaze you.
Oh, really?
Yes, really. I'm giving you 12 full minutes with a real psychic for free.
12 full minutes, all in one go?
Yes, all in one call, no strings attached. This 12 free minutes is... A good Saturday morning to you. It's time now for Storm Watch. And again today, we're keeping close tabs on some powerful thunderstorms developing across the nation's midsection. Also, we have this massive heat wave that continues to grip much of the country, and we'll say more about those top weather stories coming up in a moment. But right now, it's time for your tropical update. As we check out the tropics, the big weather story for the tropics has been Tropical Storm Celia. Now, Celia is still more or less holding its own. It's still packing maximum sustained winds up to 60 miles an hour, and it continues to move to the northwest. Now, the latest bearings has it roughly centered 145 miles south-southwest of Cabo San Lucas in Mexico. Now, the official forecast suggests that Celia probably will not change a whole lot in intensity or strength, at least for the next 12 hours or so. But as we get beyond that point, there is a chance that Celia will start to weaken. As it continues to move to the northwest, it will eventually encounter some cooler waters, and at that point, it will start to lose some of its energy source. So we do anticipate a slow weakening to be taking place as we go through the next 24 hours or so. So again, Celia may start to weaken a little bit. Now, officially, all the warnings that we had for the southern tip of Baja California have been discontinued. But there's still a chance for some rough conditions, we think, over the eastern Pacific, some choppy waters and rough seas. So mariners certainly will have to exercise some caution. From our satellite perspective, you see Celia churning up the waters here in the eastern Pacific, and still a little ball of convection, still some very squally conditions right around the center of circulation. Here's another satellite vantage point of Celia. It's a visible satellite picture, and again, it still looks fairly impressive. Again, as we were mentioning, though, Celia will likely weaken as it starts to move over those cooler waters out across the Pacific. Now, one thing else that I should have mentioned, though, is with Celia, some of the moisture from Celia could get entrained across the southwestern states in the next day or so, and that may help to enhance some of the showers or thunderstorms in parts of Arizona and New Mexico. And we'll have to watch that situation rather closely. But as far as any direct impact, no, Celia will not directly affect the lower 48. Checking out the weather across the Gulf of Mexico, kind of quiet right now from Brownsville and just off the coast of Matagorda Bay and South Padre Island. Nice conditions for some boating or fishing across most of the western Gulf and even down towards the Bay of Campeche, although we haven't seen a few showers or thunderstorms popping up across the eastern Gulf. Maybe you're heading over towards the Caribbean for a little getaway cruise or vacation. Now, we do see a few passing clouds, a few renegade showers, but nothing of any great consequence. Overall, it should stay kind of quiet today for Cuba and Jamaica, Hispaniola in pretty good shape. A few clouds are coming in around Puerto Rico at this time, but at least most of the Lesser Antilles and the Virgin Islands in fantastic shape as we kick off the weekend. Notice a large batch of clouds, though, poised just off the coast of Costa Rica and Panama and along the coastal waters of Colombia. A lot of deep convection here. A lot of showers and thunderstorms popping up, but we don't anticipate any development to take place, and that's because all these showers and thunderstorms are so close to land that certainly will inhibit any development. And also, upper level winds are not too terribly favorable either in this area, so again, no development is likely across the southern sections of the Caribbean. A little bit farther out towards the Atlantic we go. And if you recall, we were tracking a low pressure area the last couple of days, and now this is what's left of that low pressure system. It has really become very disorganized, and all the energy with this low pressure has been stretched out. So it's becoming more elongated, running from a west to east orientation here. And again, not very well concentrated right now, and we actually don't even see any discernible low-level circulation. So it's just merely a tropical wave that continues to drift towards the west. And we think that in the next couple of days or so, it will likely be impacting the southern fringes of the Lesser Antilles. So we might see some squally weather eventually coming over towards Trinidad and Tobago. Farther out towards the Atlantic, and here's the coastline of Africa. Here are the Cape Verde Islands. Still a little bit too early in the season to seriously look at this area, but as we go through the next couple of weeks, the waters will start to warm up off the African coast, and we'll have to watch this area more closely. But right now, some waves rolling off the coast, but they start to fizzle as they hit some of those cooler waters. Now, stateside, we've got some big thunderstorms, though, popping this morning, and we have had reports of severe weather pounding parts of the upper Midwest, and it shows up very distinctly from our satellite perspective. Again, some big thunderstorms cropping up here, but look at that, for most of the country, kind of a nice day, at least for weather conditions, because it will stay fairly quiet. Not a whole lot of rain to be found, but it will stay very hot. We have this huge ridge of high pressure, and with the high pressure, it causes the air to sink. And as the air sinks and compresses, we get compressional warming. That's one of the main contributing factors to this huge heat wave that we've had to endure the last several days. And unfortunately, the hot weather will be here for quite a while, we think, for the next few days or so. But elsewhere, some bad thunderstorms cropping up across the Dakotas, and we've had reports of severe weather. Still a warning in effect for Traverse County in west central sections of Minnesota. More on this coming up.
Nothing changes faster than the weather, but we're
Good Saturday evening, 10 minutes till the top of the hour. I'm Lisa Moser. Thanks for joining us. For this edition of Storm Watch, we begin by taking a look at the tropics. In the tropical area, we do have a new advisory that was posted about an hour ago, and it does have the new position of what is still Tropical Storm Celia, but weaker. The sustained winds, the maximum sustained winds at 50 miles per hour. Cecilia is still on a northwesterly track, and this is one of the reasons that we are probably seeing some of the weakening of this tropical storm. It's moving away from the inland areas, and that's good news. Very early this morning, we did have tropical storm warnings posted for the southern areas of Baja California, Mexico. Well, those warnings were allowed to expire very early today because the storm has been on this northwesterly track, and it is moving away from the inland area of the Baja as well as Mexico, and it's moving into cooler waters. The cooler water is going to help with the deterioration of the organization of this tropical storm. But if you're doing some tracking of Tropical Storm Celia, here is the latest estimated center location for Cecilia. The latitude at 21.8 north and the longitude 113.1 west, about 210 miles southwest of Cabo San Lucas, and Cabo San Lucas is right here on the extreme southern areas of the Baja of California, Mexico. Looking at the satellite imagery now, this is the infrared imagery, and you'll notice that the spiraling curvature still in place, a very well-defined tropical storm, but the bands are no longer as well as healthy, as sharp, and certainly not as well-defined as they were 24 hours ago when we did have winds that were around 60 miles per hour. Let's take a look at the visual imagery, and you'll notice that we're seeing some breaks. We're not seeing those solid lines. The feeder bands are not that solid coming in. There's a lot of breaks in them, and that's another indication that, hey, tropical storm is showing some signs of not being as strong as it was. It's all relative. You'll still notice, however, some of the feeder bands coming in across the southern areas of the Baja, and this has been associated with rain showers and very cloudy conditions, and certainly with the topography being a little bit hilly along the coastal areas of Mexico to the west here, some rain and some enhancement with that mountainous terrain is going to further induce some moisture, some rain showers, and so a little bit wet here. Let's take a look at that infrared imagery. We put that in satellite motion, and immediately you are going to be drawn, or at least most of us are, drawn to where some of the colder cloud tops are. Well, when you notice, if you look back, this imagery about 12 hours ago, if you look back when it was a little bit closer to Acapulco, Mexico, well, that was about 24 hours ago, the brighter cloud tops. We're certainly indicating much colder cloud tops, and that means a further reach into the atmosphere, a higher area of convection into the atmosphere. Well, we're not seeing that. It's pretty much pale in comparison to what it was 24 hours ago. So here too, another indication that Tropical Storm Celia is losing some of its strength, losing some of its punch as it moves into the cooler water on its northeasterly track, tracking at about 13 miles per hour. You know, the season for the Pacific starts out around May the 15th, but for the Atlantic, the tropical storm season begins June 1st. We look for favorable conditions aloft with the circulation of our airflow out here in the Caribbean, and we do see some of that. What am I talking about? I'm talking about this this clockwise rotation. This is an anticyclonic rotation. It's favorable, but you do have to have something, a disturbance, a wave, something along the surface to come into this area of favorable circulation to get things going. We don't have that right now. We do have a very wimpy remnant of what was a wave. It's still a wave in nature, but certainly it's a very wimpy one. As it does approach the Venezuela area, it is not likely that we're going to be seeing very much development here. But if you've been watching this wave as it did come off of the coastal areas of Africa, it was looking very impressive. It did survive coming through the easterlies with some shearing. The shearing, of course, not favorable for development. I want to take you out quickly to the Atlantic, a little further to the north. We had an area of low pressure just a couple of days ago that developed along the peninsula of Florida. Well, that low pressure area tracked right along the coastal vicinity, and right now we are still seeing some remnants of it. It's not tropical in nature, but it has been a big rainmaker for parts of the extreme coastal areas of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. In addition to the sea breeze kicking in the afternoon, we've been seeing a number of thunderstorms that have dumped as much as an inch or two of rainfall along this coastal area. So if you're doing some traveling in and around the beach area here, you've ran into some very wet conditions. It hasn't been very good for boating either. The seas are still a bit choppy today, around 5 feet. Out towards the Caribbean we go again, and I just want to point out that other than seeing this convection due to the sea breeze, we're looking at just those scattered thunderstorms and rain showers because of the afternoon sea breeze. It's not tropical in nature. Take you out towards the Venezuela vicinity, where I was showing you that very weak area of convection as it slowly moves in towards Venezuela, where we do have some favorable winds aloft. We'll keep an eye on that. Back home, we've got some thunderstorms to tell you about too. We'll be back.
If you're in the Northeast this weekend, you'll have a brief escape from high heat and humidity, but for how long? Stay with us for Weather Center after your local forecast.
So we'll have a ridge of high pressure right here in the middle of the country.
Are Fridays always like this? This place is nuts.
A watch for Minneapolis, and we'll show you all the details here in a minute. But first, let's get to the tropical update. And we'll first talk about Tropical Storm Celia, and this is the new information here that we just got from our 8 o'clock advisory. That is Pacific Daylight Time. Winds are at 50 miles per hour, moving west-northwest at 15 miles per hour, and pressure is about 1,000 millibars. So really not a change here, and it continues on its west-northwest track, and it's about 270 miles west of Cabo San Lucas. And the good news is it is moving away from land, and we're already seeing some improving conditions for the southern tip of Baja and even into Acapulco, where earlier we had about 10 inches of rainfall in the last 2 days. But here it is, Tropical Storm Celia, and looking at convection, the deep convection anyway, losing the reds, but still seeing some of the blues and yellows around the center of circulation. So it remains the same, and still looking at some outflow here around the system in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And it continues to move away, and will move into cooler water. So the forecast is for the next, let's say, day or so to dissipate, but in the meantime probably being downgraded to a tropical depression in the next 36 hours or so. But for you folks here, if you have interest in Baja or in Mexico, it is moving away from land. The biggest threat right now to land is still the high surf that we're probably seeing here, and still some of the heavier rainfalls that we're seeing. But as it moves farther away, we should see improving conditions. And most of the area here just to the south and east of Tropical Storm Celia looks pretty quiet tonight. This is where we call it the monsoon trough. A lot of tropical depressions are born here, and they track off towards the north and the west. Sometimes they get pulled inland, but we're really not seeing much activity here. That is for sure. Not even any kind of an organized area of convection to be found. So kind of quiet. Now the upper level winds over that area, I mean, they are somewhat favorable. We do have an upper level ridge over the region, but again, nothing at the surface to get going. Meanwhile, over the Caribbean, we are showing, not an upper level ridge, an upper level low, our tropical upper tropospheric trough extending down into this area. So that is not favorable for sure into the Caribbean. And the Gulf of Mexico, we do see an upper level anticyclone or anticyclonic flow, but at the surface we also have high pressure. So if we don't get thunderstorms that start to develop at the surface, we won't get anything to develop. So you kind of need things hand in hand there. Now, an area that we kind of have to be concerned about is here in the eastern Atlantic, and we'll talk about that in a second because we move out of the way. We do have easterly winds aloft, and that is providing an environment favorable for tropical depression development or tropical storm development because there's not much shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere. If thunderstorms would develop, we would get a cluster of thunderstorms or a low to form at the surface. We have weak winds aloft. We have easterly winds aloft. They're not going to tear those thunderstorms apart or the tops off that we could actually get something to develop. But we are not seeing anything at the surface here. We have a couple of tropical waves, but we'll take a closer look and I'll show you that really at this point we're not concerned with it. And as I said, folks along here, along the Gulf Coast, you can rest easy tonight. Also along the Atlantic seaboard, no problems. We think at least through the next 24, 36 hours, no tropical development here. And if you have plans to head to the Bahamas or even down into Hispaniola, expect a few afternoon thunderstorms. I mean, we do have that upper level trough over the area. But again, that is not conducive to any tropical development. And plus, afternoon thunderstorms develop here. They move out usually by the evening time. As you can see, most of them are doing that, moving out over open water. Now here comes one wave. Okay, just east of the islands, the Windward and Leeward Islands. And, you know, no low-level circulation, although we are seeing a thunderstorm here. And that's something we'll watch. But at this point, again, no circulation, a broad area of low pressure or a trough along this region. That's really it. Earlier, we were watching a wave here that actually did show some potential of developing, but that is also weakened. So we'll watch these waves as they come across. Again, with the upper levels being favorable at the surface, right now we're not seeing anything happening. So we need that area of thunderstorms to develop. We need that to persist. We need some sort of low-level circulation to develop before we worry about anything tropical, and that is just not happening here. Another wave coming off Africa, and we'll continue to watch this. So probably a good idea is to, since it is quiet, if you live anywhere along the coast or even inland from the coast, you might want to just be prepared. Just get your emergency kit ready, just in case. You know, flashlight, water supplies, some food and stuff ready, just in case that we do have one develop here. Okay, it's better to be ready than to be caught unaware or off guard. Now let's talk about some severe weather here across the Midwest and the upper northern plains. Here it is with our front, and we actually have severe weather possibly moving into Minneapolis later on tonight. We do have a watch in your area now, a severe thunderstorm watch. And look at these cells here. They continue on their easterly track. They could hit St. Paul and some of the western suburbs here in the next hour or so, and probably already starting to see a little bit of rain coming in here. Looks like most of the active weather is just off to your west. We have many severe thunderstorm warnings out with this, so watch out. We've had reports of 60-mile-per-hour winds, in some cases even tornado touchdowns. We'll give you all the details coming up next on Weather Center.
Those of you in the Northeast, get ready for the return of hot and muggy conditions. We'll tell you when they'll be back on Weather Center right after your local forecast.
If you're ready for your own home and money is tight, you're probably asking yourself questions like, what kind of home can we get with